Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm White Lightning and I am a Star Wars fan. I spent my childhood in the 90s and 2000s watching the movies, reading the books, and playing the video games, and all that content consumption gave me a lifelong love for the franchise, probably like many of you who clicked on this video. Of those Star Wars video games, Star Wars Empire at War is one of my absolute favorites. Originally released clear back in 2006, the real-time strategy game continues to enjoy robust and even growing player counts, due largely to an active modding community that has kept the game fresh for decades now. My favorite mod, Thrawn's Revenge, from which the game footage in this video is derived, lets you play through the history of the old expanded universe factions post-Return of the Jedi. A number of other high-quality mods, Empire at War Remake, Awakening of the Rebellion, and more, give players a huge variety of gameplay experience and help keep love for Star Wars, old and new, alive. Whether or not you play Empire at War modded though, it remains a real-time strategy game, and strategy games take skill and practice to beat. This is especially true when playing at high difficulty settings or with modded AI behavior. In these conditions, simply throwing waves of random ships and troops at the enemy doesn't cut it. You have to be methodical, deliberate, and, well, strategic. In the real world, military thinkers and planners have spent thousands of years figuring out how to give their side every possible advantage in dealing with difficult enemies. Over the centuries, it's become common to put down in writing the principles that each philosopher, general, or military planner thinks are most important to fighting a war. Many of these principles are actually very applicable in Empire at War. Witness the word war in the title. Applying them can help guide a player to easier and more satisfying victories. So, for the edification of whoever wants to watch these videos, but mostly because I think it'll be fun for me to do, I decided to make a series where I play through an Empire at War campaign while deliberately basing and explaining my decisions off of the principles of war. First, though, some clarification. Which principles of war? Military manuals of tips and tricks abound, from Sun Tzu's Art of War to Byzantine Emperor Maurice's Strategicon, to Karl von Clausewitz's On War. Modern militaries maintain their own various doctrines, and while the exact number of principles varies from writer to writer and country to country, there tends to be a lot of overlap between the lists, even across the century. For my purposes, I use the US Army's 9 Principles of Warfare, which are laid out in Field Manual 3-0, Operations. According to FM 3-0, the principles are not a checklist. While considered in all operations, they do not apply it in the same way to every situation. Rather, they summarize characteristics of historically successful operations. With that in mind, in the next few minutes I'll go over the 9 principles: objective, unity of command, offensive, mass, economy of force, maneuver, surprise, security, and simplicity, and discuss how they might be applicable to a typical game of Empire at War. Principle 1. Objective. The ultimate military purpose of war is the defeat of the enemy's armed forces and will to fight using organized violence or the threat of violence. The principle of objective drives all military activity toward that end, with the least possible employment of resources on secondary considerations. In Empire at War terms, the objective is simple. Conquer the galaxy by destroying or negating the enemy's fleets, armies, and means to produce additional fleets and armies. Actions that do not contribute to achieving the objective, for example, smashing fleets against each other just for the cinematic vibe of it, should be avoided. Unless, of course, you would have fun doing so. This is just a game after all, so play it in the way that's fun to you. Principle 2. Unity of command. This principle ensures that all efforts focus on a common goal. Unity of command means that a single commander coordinates the actions of all forces toward a common objective. Since I'll be playing this campaign in a single-player galactic conquest against the AI opponent, unity of command on my side is all but assured unless a previously undiagnosed split personality manifests itself. However, since I'll be playing as the New Republic, I'll be able to take advantage of my enemy's disunity of command by picking off targets as the Imperial Warlord factions fight against each other. At the in-game operational and tactical level, this can also look like taking action to isolate enemy units, and exploiting boundaries like hyperspace lanes, neutral territory, or terrain between enemy formations. Principle 3. Offensive. Offensive action, or maintaining the initiative, is the most effective and decisive way to pursue and attain the objective. In Empire at War, the attacker often has some pretty significant advantages, like a potentially large pool of reinforcement ships that can be hyperspaced in nearly anywhere on the map, a la Darth Vader in Rogue One. Attackers in ground battles also enjoy support from powerful capital ships and bombers in orbit. And of course, you can't conquer the galaxy by turtling the entire time. Eventually you have to make some attacks and take some territory. While operational and tactical level defensive posture often makes sense, it should always be a temporary solution, buying you time to ready your next offensive move. Principle 4. Mass. Misapplication of this principle is probably the #1 mistake I see other RTS and Empire at War players make, and it kills me every time. Integrating all the elements of combat power and synchronizing their application against a decisive point achieves mass. Concentrating forces is typically necessary to achieve favorable ratios during combat, and it may even enable numerically inferior forces to achieve decisive battle and campaign outcome. In Empire at War, fleet and army population cap limits, for Thrawn's Revenge it's 300 or about 8 Star Destroyers worth of combat power in a space battle, mean you have to be very deliberate about how big you make your stacks. It can be tempting to spread your forces too thin, posting small fleets of 50 to 100 pop cap on every frontline planet in an attempt to have full coverage, but this invites attack from much stronger enemy fleets. In my opinion, step 1 in any galactic conquest should be concentrating your ground and space units into as many full-size fleets and armies as you can, then posting them at key locations where they can provide robust offense or defense as required. Partial stacks should only be used as temporary stopgaps until you can build up enough to employ a full stack. I generally shoot for between 300 to 350 pop for my space fleets to give myself a modest pool of reinforcement. Principle 5, Economy of Force. A commander must employ available combat power in the most efficient way possible. For most of an Empire at War campaign, you will rarely have enough combat power available to enjoy a favorable balance of forces everywhere, so you have to deliberately accept some risk in some areas, like a key planet you plan to defend on ground rather than in space, to achieve superiority in other areas. Economy of Force is also a reciprocal of the principle of mass. While it can be satisfying to make an attack with a 1,000 pop fleet because you know you have tons of reinforcements to draw from, you might get more strategic benefit from splitting that fleet so you have more options on the galactic level. Principle 6, Maneuver. Maneuver is about moving forces and firepower into better positions relative to enemy forces to gain a compelling advantage. In Empire at War, mobility is key, and getting bogged down with large static formations is a great way to lose more units than necessary to win the battle. When I play, I tend to use my faster units for hit and run attacks, then pull them back to heal at a tender or repair station. This makes my units more survivable and decreases the overall cost of a given engagement. While not every faction's roster has a ton of high mobility units, they all have at least something, and using those options to hit the flanks and rear of the enemy formation while it's engaged with your tankier, slower moving units can really pay off. Principle 7, Surprise. Surprise results from taking actions for which an enemy or adversary force unprepared. Hitting an enemy where and when they're not expecting it can be an effective way to inflict maximum losses and take minimum damage. Factors that contribute to surprise include speed of movement, employment of combat power the enemy does not expect, and variations in tactics that create ambiguity. If you're trying to wear down a faction's space forces, try to pick off their smaller fleets so you don't have to go toe-to-toe with a dangerous large one. You can also use stealthy units to slip behind enemy lines undetected, deploying teams of commandos or Jedi to destroy key objectives like surface-to-orbit weapons, or even conquer a planet outright from under an enemy fleet's nose. Principle 8, Security. In the last principle, we talked about surprising the enemy. Security is all about preventing the enemy from surprising us. As commanders of forces, we need to protect and preserve our combat power and avoid ceding any advantages to the enemy unnecessarily. At the galactic level, security looks like keeping an active spy force out, keeping an eye on the enemy planets so you can watch for buildups of forces that suggest a coming attack. One thing I like to do is leave defensive fleets stationed at clusters of planets so they can move to respond quickly when our spy network tells us an enemy fleet is incoming. At the tactical level, be sure not to neglect your scouting units like speeder bikes, air speeders, or units with sensor ping ability, so you can keep an eye on the enemy. You may also want to leave some forces to guard key fragile units, like artillery, from flanking or rear attacks. Finally, Principle 9, Simplicity. Simplicity of plans and instructions contribute to successful operations and reduce the chances for error. All factors being equal, a simple plan executed promptly is preferred to a complex plan executed too late. Complex plans also often hinge on the enemy following a specific course of action, moving fleets to certain places, advancing across the map on a certain path, etc., in order to be successful, but remember, in battle the enemy always gets a vote. Furthermore, in Empire at War, even getting your own units to follow complex orders can be challenging because of limitations with the AI, issues with pathfinding, and the tendency of units to chase down enemies they spot. A simple plan that is good will work out pretty much no matter what the enemy, or your own slightly goofy AI, decides to do. Well, that was a lot of words, but what about playing the actual game? In the rest of this series, I'll be playing a Galactic Conquest campaign as the New Republic in Empire at War with the Thrawn's Revenge mod. I'll be playing on maximum difficulty on the Full Galaxy Medium map, which has over 130 planets, so settle in for a long series and expect some cuts for periods that get too repetitive or uninteresting. As I play, I'll try to explain why I play the way I do, talk more about the principles of warfare, and chat about Star Wars lore while I bring peace, freedom, justice, and security to my New Republic. I think I'll have a ton of fun playing this way, which is why I'm doing this, and I hope you all enjoy watching.